We are on the cusp of a major social change. Do you feel it? Even if you don't, make no mistake, change is coming, and it is going to be unforgettable. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Hart, and here on Prime Spark, where we work with and on behalf of women over 55, I want to help you find that spark that will ignite your way forward, reflect your gifts to the world, and illuminate your path through this next stage of life. Through these podcast conversations, I hope to inspire you to see how you can make a significant contribution to some of the gnarly problems that are facing us right now. Join me, and together let's discover our Prime Spark. Hi, and welcome to Prime Spark. I'm Sarah Hart, and I'm so happy you're here with us. Prime Spark is designed for women over 55, or close, with a goal to help us all live our happiest, most fulfilling, and productive lives now and in the future. The mission of Prime Spark is to change the way our society sees and treats older women. That's a big mission, which only means we all need to be involved and we need to get going now. And today I have the great pleasure of speaking with Jen Hardy, a woman whose work I greatly admire. As a podcast host, author, speaker, and community builder, Jen Hardy is devoted to helping women over 50 discover their full potential and reclaim their power. She is the host of the Fabulous Over 50 podcast, formerly Hardy Mom, where she provides actionable tips and advice that will help you level up in your career, relationships, and life. Jen also hosts the Medical Gaslighting podcast, which aims to educate and empower patients. Jen was raised by an entrepreneur and started working in the family business at the age of 12. She's been blogging since 2015, wrote the book, The Sick Mom's Guide to Having Fun Again in 2017, and started the Fabulous Over 50 podcast in 2018. In 2022, she published 3 5-year journals, one for business owners to build their success, one for those on a quest for happiness, and one for moms with chronic illness. In addition to her work as an author and podcaster, she and her husband founded the Space Coast Podcasters, a local podcast meetup group that provides a supportive community for aspiring and established podcasters alike. Jen has a passion for sharing knowledge and creating community. She also runs 2 masterminds, Gold Circle for podcasting women over 50, and Radical Rejuvenation for all women over 50 who want to level up their lives. Jen's latest endeavor, Jen's Friends, is a daily encouraging email to women over 50. It alleviates loneliness, inspires growth, and encourages them to take charge of their lives and create the life of their dreams, because we're never too old to be fabulous. Hi, Jen. Thank you for being here. I'm so happy you're here.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me. I absolutely love your work, and I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you. So let's just get started with a question. Do you experience getting older? And if you do, what is that experience? And if you don't, why is it that you think that you don't?
You know, this is a perfect time to ask me that question. I just had my 55th birthday last month, and I'll be honest, until about a year ago, I really believed that I looked about 30. I looked like I was in my early 30s. I looked like that when I was 18, and I just stayed just like that. And I felt very fortunate because people used to think that I was my adult children's sister. And not just saying that, people will say that, but I look back at those pictures just from a few years ago and I think, oh my goodness. But last year I got COVID and then I got pneumonia and I had a mild heart attack and a stroke all within 5 or 6 months. And I hit my age. My body aged that next 20 something years, all in that year. And I think it's been a little rough because to go from feeling like I look so much younger to suddenly looking like I should look at my age, it was a little bit hard for me. And so I definitely am experiencing getting older. And, I have told people this for the longest time that Mother Nature is no woman because no woman would do this to women. And I think it's not fair. We experience the gravity and all these things. And for some reason, men just get mature and wise and whatever, and women get old, which is why I love what you're doing, in this fighting all of this, because everybody ages. I mean, if you're successful at life and you're living, you're aging. That's how it is, right?
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I say this, and I have to be careful where I say this because it annoys people, but I mean, you either get older or you die.
exactly. I mean, that's
mean,
your choice.
That's our choice.
So, it's funny because I always used to say, I'm going to cherish every wrinkle because it means that I've learned something and whatever. And I'm going to be honest, it is a little bit hard to wrap my brain around it some days, but I am so thankful I'm still here. I really, I'm thankful I'm on this planet. I can see my kids grow up and live this life. And so, yeah. Yeah. In fact, I did an episode called My Neck Has Fallen and It Can't Get Up because all of a sudden I looked down and I saw things on my neck that weren't there before, and our culture tells us that that's a horrible thing, but it doesn't need to be. It really doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we can be very mature about it and open about it and think about wrinkles show my experience and so what that. But our culture, shoves it in our face all the time about what's better. And what's better is 25.
Right.
And, so I think we really have to struggle and support each other to come to the point of older is good in lots of ways. And I'm tired being told and shown the opposite. I'm just tired of it. So that's why we're all doing what we're doing right now, Jen. We're just doing it in our own way, in whatever way we're doing it.
Yeah, because it has to be done. I've got kids that are 11 and 13 that are my biological children. I had them when I was 41 and 43, and everyone thinks I'm their grandparent, which is very frustrating. But also it puts me in a position to be, usually you're friends with your kids' friends' parents, right? But I'm the age of their grandparent. And so it's been interesting. I didn't really realize the level of ageism that we have in our country until the last few years when I've started looking like their grandma and not their mom. And people, I don't know. It could be better.
It is. I was on a train yesterday, and I was coming back from San Francisco, and I was trying to figure out where I was supposed to get off because I was on the wrong train. And so I was standing looking at the route map that made no sense to me. And so, a couple of people came up and tried to help figure it out, and they couldn't figure it out. And so they sat down. And then a woman came up and said, this is what I think you should do. But right now, would you please make this doctor happy and sit down? And I knew she saw me as a very old woman and that I was in danger of falling. And, on the one hand, that was kind. And on the other hand, it was just, wait a minute. I'm not going to fall down here. Anyway, it is that I had somebody the other day talk about their experience when they went to their mailbox and their AARP card was there. And that's quite a day.
Yeah, that day just came for me. My husband's younger, and he said, you cannot get an AARP card because they'll send one to me when you get one. and I'm not ready. And so, but they had a bag I wanted, and we wanted some whatever information. And so I just did it. And yeah, there's something about getting that card in the mail, isn't there? And oh my goodness, last year for the first time, I had my daughter with me and she's only 12, and we walked into this store and they gave me the senior discount.
Yes.
And I thought, and that was before this whole thing where I got sick and I felt like I looked my age. I didn't feel like I looked, and I laughed. I started laughing when she said that. I laughed through paying, through getting my bag and walking out of I was just hysterical belly laughing all the whole time.
I remember
But
the first
I'm
time.
thankful.
Yeah, I remember the first time I was offered a senior discount, and my first response inside was, "What?" And then I thought, Sarah, get a grip. You get cheaper. I mean,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I'll take it. It
I'll
does
take
feel
it.
strange. Yeah.
You do so many things, Jen. I got tired just reading through it all. How do you do everything you do?
It's funny. I don't think about how many things I do until I hear someone say it. And then I think, oh my goodness, it's a lot. Plus, I'm a homeschool mom still. I'm still, doing the whole thing and caregiving for my husband who's not been feeling so well. And it's a lot. I've learned to set boundaries. That is something that I struggled with until about the last year. When I started my company, finally, because I have so many things happening, I've learned to be able to say, I'm going in my office and I'm closing the door and I'm going to do these things and not take the calls. And I, believe it or not, have pared down what I do. I was doing a lot more.
Oh, no.
But I just feel like I have to be busy. I'm always doing something productive. I don't play games on my phone. I don't spend time doing other things. I just spend time doing this because honestly, it's all fun to me. Everything I'm doing is what I do for fun. And so I think that's how I get it all done because I just love it. I love every part of it.
So, of all the things you do, what gives you the most satisfaction?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, there's two. They're pretty neck and neck. I think the podcasting, I love podcasting. I love it so much. I love the people. It's just this greatest crowd. And I really like the Jen's Friends. I love making those videos. Trying to come up with, a unique video for every single day is not the easiest thing. And it took me about 6 months of getting the software to go together so I could send an email with a video every day. That's not easy. But I did it and I have such satisfaction for that. And I think there's so many people that are so lonely. It's an epidemic right now. I think post what we went through in 2020, it was so isolating. And just to know that people don't feel lonely and they have something that they can look forward to, because as a mom with adult children I don't get the calls I would like from all of my kids. And I think, oh my goodness, if I didn't hear from them but a couple times a year and I didn't have anyone else at home, how would I feel? What would I want? And so I'm trying to provide for other people what I would want.
So, describe the Jen's Friends. I think that sounds wonderful, but I'm not real sure
So,
what it is yet.
yeah, well, and that's the thing because there's nothing like it, and it's been a little bit hard explaining it to people. So basically, I send out, it's kind of like an email newsletter, like you would get from everybody else, except I'm there talking to you every single day, just 3 to 4 minutes. It's not too long, just telling you, you know what, you are a wonderful woman. And if you haven't heard that from somebody else today, I just want to let you know that you're a wonderful person and you're loved and you're beautiful and all the things that we need to hear. And we also talk about little projects like some people can't get out of bed. If you can't get out of bed, you can make the bed around you, right? But for those who can, we might have, we're going to clean out the junk drawer this week. So this week is the one thing, and we'll just do little things at a time just to keep people motivated. And because if you don't have somebody checking in on you regularly and making sure that you're doing these little things, I think it's important to we feel so successful when we complete a project, and so I want to be doing it with them too. And then they can also respond back to the email or not, however they want to do. So we can actually be more like friends than one.
And do they feel like a group or is it really them to you?
Right now, it's just them to me. Honestly, I didn't think about a group, but that might not be a bad idea for the future.
Yeah. Interesting. That's really interesting. I don't know how you would think of something different every day.
It has been interesting. Yeah. But I like to write. I like to do creative things. So we can pick a topic for the week and talk about that and move on. And yeah, it's ask me in a year. We'll see in a year after 365 videos how creative I can be after that. I don't know how I'm going to keep track, but of thousands of them. But that's okay. Well, it gives me something to do in my spare time.
It would be fun for you to take those 365 things and turn it into a journal, like you've done journals. And so
that would be a good idea.
You could send it out to people, and so they, because that material is all going to be stuff that you've prepared. So,
right, that's a good idea. I like that. Thank you. You've got all kinds of great ideas.
So before you started doing what you're doing now, what did you do before? So you started working at 12. What was the family business?
So my dad actually was a steel broker, steel the metal. He was not a thief. But he would buy steel and sell it to people. A lot of it was being sold to Japan. His best friend lived in Japan, which ironically, my best friend lives in Japan, and they're completely unrelated. But I would answer the phones for him. That's how I started. And I actually became an operator at AT&T because of my experience, because my dad had a multi-line phone at home because that's what he did. And so if I was sitting in the kitchen, I would answer his phone, ML Young and Associates. And I was a operator from the time that I was 12. And so at 18, I got to do that, which was really fun. And then I would always say, thank you for calling AT&T. How can I help you? Because you have to answer the phone about, 10 times a minute. But yeah, that's how I started, and basic paperwork and that kind of stuff. And I think what I learned from my dad was that if you have a business, you take the risk, and there is risk. There was steel collapsed in the late 80s. But you get everything that you make. And there's a lot to be said for that. And, we had a cabin in the mountains. We lived by the beach. We did all the things, and he could take off and come and go as he wanted. We never thought about when dad had to work, because it wasn't ever a have to. He just did it on his schedule. And for the first few decades of my working life, I really struggled with working for somebody. And I thought I was just lazy, and I finally realized last year in my 50s, I'm not lazy. I want to have what my dad had. And so now I'm doing that, and it feels so good.
So it was just last year that you started doing really all this on your own?
The business aspect, yeah, where I start actually selling things and making money. I started in 2014. I got really sick, and I had 7 kids at home. And so I couldn't find what I needed, long story short. So I started creating things and then publishing what I was doing to keep my house running for other people. So if they were in the same position, they could find it. But after 8 years of talking about how sick I was, it got really depressing. And I love those moms. I've left the website up. I've left the first 118 episodes of the podcast talk about all those things. But I thought, I'm just going to keep that podcast up and continue from there, because as we age, we also have chronic illness. And a lot of people are raising their grandchildren now, and they're trying to deal with all of the things it's different to parent now than it was. Even between the kids I have now at home and my 20 and 30-year-olds, the world is a wild place to raise kids. So I thought, well, I'll just leave that up. And then if you're, got a grandchild with you for a few months, you can have some resources there too.
I love the term medical gaslighting. Would you talk about that a little bit? Because I think that is so relevant, and it's really relevant for older women.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and it's funny because when I first started it, I hadn't transitioned to Fabulous Over 50. And it is women in general and people of color. But also now that I'm in this sphere, it's crazy how rampant it is. So, in regular life, gaslighting is when someone tries to make you feel like you're crazy and basically sets out to do it. And medical gaslighting, for the most part, the doctors are not setting out to make you think that you're crazy. They are overworked. Believe it or not, a lot of them are underpaid for what they're doing. They've got 5 minutes apiece with patients. They don't have time. But when the gaslighting comes in, it's say I go to the doctor and I say, I'm in so much pain. I wake up, my body hurts. This is actually something that happens. I wake up, my body hurts all over. I've tried everything. I'm eating healthy. I'm doing all the things. There's something wrong. And the doctor might say, well, you're just a little bit depressed. Go home and you'll be fine. Okay. But I'm not fine and I can't do things. So, or they kind of make people feel like they're crazy. And so before we knew what was happening with my body, I would tell them, if you think I'm crazy, great, treat me for that then. Treat me for something, but I can't live like this. I'm miserable. And they just kind of blow you off. One of the girls on the show, she was born with a rib that came out of one of her cervical bones, one of the bones in her neck, and it was 6 inches long. This woman had 7 X-rays, and no one found this bone. Now, she lived in a rural area and she didn't have insurance, so she was not getting much quality health care. And it wasn't until she started dating a physical therapist, and she said, I've had this knot basically my whole life. Can you try to work it out for me? And he started rubbing her neck and he said, honey, that's not a muscle. That's a bone. And it took another x-ray and 2 years for her to get that removed. And it was pressing on her aorta. So anytime she put her hands above her head, she'd pass out because the blood would stop flowing to her head. And do you know what those doctors told her? Her mom was in a wheelchair and they said, sweetheart, just because your mom's in a wheelchair doesn't mean something's wrong with you. You're fine. Go home. And it had nothing to do with that. But they didn't want to listen because she was a woman. They just assumed
I was just thinking, would they have said that to a man? They wouldn't have said that to a man.
No, I don't think so. Although my husband is unwell right now and we are trying to get him care, and it's been a nightmare. I could do a whole year of episodes on just what we've done. In fact, I may end up doing that. Because it is hard to get guests for that show because it's a hard thing to talk about. And that's why I wanted to do it, because when it happens to you and doctors push you off and push you off and, you feel like you're crazy and you feel so sad and, is there something wrong with me? Like mentally, what's going on? And I just wanted to give them some power. But the great thing that's come out of that podcast, when I told a friend of mine about it, she said, well, what are you going to do? What's the second half of the show going to be? And I said, well, what do you mean the second half? We're going to tell their story. And she said, no, that's just depressing. You can't do that. So now they do tell their story, but then they talk about their tips for the listener to be the best patient they can be. So we're taking it from something negative and something sad, and we're giving them power, and they get to say, this is what I would do. And we're not saying it's their fault that it happened, but just how could people do things differently? Maybe what's a different way other patients, now that, because hindsight is 2020, right? What would be the best thing to do? And that has been really good. It's been very helpful for the people who have been on the show.
I think that's wonderful, Jen, because and good for your friend for asking you the question about what's the second half. I think that there's a lot of things wrong with our Western medical system. And I'm very glad it's there, because I'm here because it's there. So I'm not, just as you said, I'm not really blaming doctors because they work under such difficult conditions on a lot of times. Nevertheless, we end up getting not very good health care a lot of the time. And I think as we get older, and as older women and of color, it gets worse and worse and worse. So to help women understand what they can do to stand up for themselves. And if you're not being treated, and not medically, I mean, certainly that, but if you're not being treated as a human being, well, then let's just have another doctor, because I've fired several doctors in my life. I can't work with you.
Yeah. And gone are the days when the doctor is God. And because the doctor, they're not God anymore. And I think, 50 years ago, when we only knew about a limited amount of issues, they could know about all the issues, and they could do their best to treat what they could, and they didn't treat the rest. But now we know about so many things, but they don't. Your general practitioner doesn't know about every little nuanced thing that has been discovered. And I think the one thing that's come out of all this is bring someone with you. Bring someone with you every time you go to the doctor, even if it's a small thing. because it's so easy. We have so many things we want to say, and it's an emotional thing. Even when we just go for our checkup, it's still emotional. What if they find something? There's always those little things in the back of your head. So if you write down your questions, write down your concerns every time. And if you can bring someone, and if you can bring a man, even better, as silly as that is in this day and age. But uh, yeah, I've had times where I've talked to my doctor and looked him straight in the eye and told him what I needed, and he says no. And my husband's in the room. He'll say, "No, you're going to do that." And it's like a Jedi mind trick. Oh, I'll do that. And I think, no, just no.
One of the ways I determine whether or not I think I should keep working with a doctor, I'm going to sneeze. We do have a lot of information now that we didn't used to have, and there's a lot of bogus information on the internet. And so you have to be careful what you look up, and you have to be careful what sources you're going to, and yada, yada, yada. But if you are, then you've got a lot of information, and a lot of it is good information because it's from reputable sources. So I sort of judge my doctor's response when I talk about reading something on the internet. If it's sort of an eye rolling thing, then I think, okay, well, this probably isn't going to work.
Right.
But if they're really willing to work with me and we can figure this out together, then that's fine. I love what you're doing there, Jen.
Thank you.
That's very helpful. So when you said you realized you couldn't keep working for somebody, what were you doing?
Oh, well, I wasn't working for someone at the time. I've only worked for other people in little fits and starts through my life, partly because I just hate it. But also because I've been very blessed to be able to stay home. We have so many kids that we figured I would have made about $1 an hour if I had childcare. So there was no point in that. But I've got to do some great things. I've been an AT&T operator. I used to sell insurance for State Farm. I was an EMT in an emergency room. Everything. I've had a lot of things I've wanted to do, and I've tried most of them. And I've settled on just doing what I really want to do.
I love it. I have to ask you, do you know if there are still AT&T operators? Is there such a thing as an operator anymore?
No, because there used to be information operators and all of that. I would imagine there's some calls that you need to make, I don't know, with a person.
I don't know. Just when
I don't know.
when you said that you were an AT&T operator, is an AT&T operator sort of like a party line on the telephone? What
right where that's gone?
The operator.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, because I don't know about you, but I've tried talking to AT&T and getting support, and even as a customer, that's almost impossible. So.
No, as far as I can tell, there's no place anymore where human beings work. I don't know where they all went, but they're not at most of the places that I want to talk to them.
Yeah. Well, and I remember reading a thing just a couple of years ago that said there are not going to be any more people at grocery stores or fast food. They'll be in the kitchen, right? Or stocking, but there's no more customer service anywhere. And I thought, how is that going to happen so fast? And when you look around, it is.
It's already happening.
Yeah. Yeah. So where are all those people going to go? That is the thing,
Yeah, that's a huge problem now. And it's going to get to be a bigger and bigger problem because all of those service jobs, people need work.
Right. And what did we do? We know for our first job when we were teenagers, there are all those jobs.
Well, the first thing I did, you answered your father's phone. The first thing I did was I weighed grain trucks for my father. My father managed a grain elevator, and in the summer when I was just a little kid, I weighed trucks.
Oh, there you go.
Put a box at the weigh machine for me because I couldn't reach the things. But I think we learn good things that way. I don't need to know how to weigh a truck, but I need to know that I'm supposed to be there at a certain time, that I can have X amount of time for lunch, that I have to be there until it's time to go home, all sorts of things. And then at some point, I think some of us realize, okay, I don't think I want to do it that way anymore. I don't want to have to be at work at a certain time. I don't want to have X amount of time for lunch.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And work ethic too, I think. When you get to see your parent working,
yes,
and you see how hard they work, they're doing that for you. I think there's
Yes.
a lot to be said for that.
My father went to work every day. He must have been sick at some point. I don't know, but I don't remember it. And it was that translated for us then into you went to school every day. I mean, if you were sick, you stayed home. But I mean, you really had to be sick. You couldn't
Oh,
just, I
goodness.
don't feel like going to school. That would go nowhere. And so, I think there's something to all that. I'm very old fashioned, but I still.
No, but I think so. I mean, we homeschool and we still, the kids don't get sick days because when you homeschool, you can school when you're sick, unless you are really
sick.
But I mean, that you have to be real sick. Otherwise, yeah, you're doing it because you can sit in bed and read a book.
You don't have to worry about giving it to somebody else.
Exactly.
Jen, what do you find with all the different people and women, particularly that you talk to? What do you find are some of their biggest concerns right now, or things they're thinking about, or whatever?
That's a good question. I think, finding there's a few things. The first thing that comes up is the way we look at our bodies and self-judgment. I think that is huge, especially as we're getting older. And even we don't want to, I think part of us, the majority of women I talk to has said, you know what? I don't give two hoops about what other people think anymore. I'm done with that. I'm done with their judgment. I'm done. Once I hit 50, I stopped caring so much about what everyone else said. And there's a beauty of aging in that. But at the same time, there is that little voice in our head that says, yeah, but look at these wrinkles, look at this sag, whatever. I just, and so that's a concern. But also, finding other people to have relationships with. And I don't know about you, but so when I was a girl, my mom was a Democrat, my dad was a Republican. They had very interesting conversations at the dinner table. Their friends were a mix of political parties. And I remember some of their friends were in politics and we would go and help their campaigns. And it didn't matter what side they were on. We were all friends and we helped. You cannot have those same conversations now. And I've talked to so many people that are losing friends left and right because they're on the other side, whatever the other side is, because we've lost the ability to have compassion and I love hearing someone that thinks something the opposite of what I think, or that, believes in something that's the opposite of me. And I like having conversations with them so that I can understand where they're coming from. They may or may not change my mind. And probably, honestly, not at this point. But I want to know, why do you feel that way? And let's have these conversations, right? In fact, I talked to somebody about a topic that is a huge topic for me that I never thought I'd understand the other side. And because we sat for 30 minutes and I was really open, I said, I really don't believe in what you think at all. Can you explain it? And she did. And now I get it. I totally get it. And so I think we need to be able to have those friends that we can talk to about all the things without that judgment. So I think that's something that's really been rough for a lot of people.
Okay, I was just about to ask you, what's next, of what you're going to do? And I think that's next for you. I think you would be wonderful to figure out how to have, I don't know, circles of that so that people can talk things through, and not with a goal of changing anybody's mind necessarily. I mean, right. I will admit that at this point, I couldn't be any more biased than I am. And so the likelihood of somebody being able to change my mind is next to zero. But I would like to understand better how they see things, because I really don't understand.
Right. Like, how in the world did you get to thinking that? Because it doesn't make any sense to me. Right. And to be able to say that in a compassionate way and get a compassionate response instead of an argument. I did start something that is not in my bio, but I started something called the Good Human Guild, and we give the Good Human Guild awards. Right now, it's should be every Friday, but it's not always every Friday because it's only me at this point. But what I've done is because of all this anarchy and chaos that I see out there that I don't like, and because I have to do something when I see something, I find somebody, and right now it's just in my sphere of people. But if anybody listening has someone that is just a good human, that's it, that just goes out of their way as a person to be kind and good, however you see good. I'm not even defining that word. We're just giving it's just a little certificate that I give them. And we're talking about that every Friday on the podcast, because I think we need to point out that in all of this, there are good humans and we need to recognize them. And so that is actually another project that I'm really proud of, that I really like. Yeah.
Do you have anything that is coming next that you're going to start that you're thinking about but not doing yet? And if you do, are you going to have to stop doing something in order to start doing it?
That's a really good question. Well, my goal is not to stop anything that I'm doing, but get them on a little bit better track. I wish I could use AI like everyone else's to do all my functions. And I'm about to hire a little bit of help, and that's really going to help me take off and do the next thing. The next thing is actually a podcasting journal. Just like my other journals, that's set up so that we can grow our podcast, because pod fade is such a thing where people stop podcasting. And I just, for some reason, absolutely love podcasting. And so I want to help people stay. So that's, for right now, that's my only next thing. But I feel like I've got enough. I'm juggling enough that I don't need to take on another big one, probably.
Oh, well, yeah, I think I'd vote on that. But I love the pod fade, actually. That's because it is, I love it. I've met so many, particularly women. I've only interviewed a small handful of men. But I never would have met them, ever, if I didn't have it. And it does get, over time, finding people and scheduling it and getting them on, and it's not a slam dunk. So, yeah. So, Jen, this has been absolutely wonderful. If somebody wants to get in touch with you for any of what you're doing, and particularly for that good person thing, I love that. How can they get in touch with you?
Everything is on jenhardy.net. Everything all together. Just go there. There's a menu on the top. You'll find all the things. That's just the easiest way to do it. There's a contact thing. You can contact me, ask me any questions, everything.
There have got to be something in Jen's menu that really appeals to you, because it is about a 5-page menu. So
it is full.
It'll be there. So thank you. That's our time today. Please join us again. You can find our Prime Spark podcast on every popular outlet. Find out more about Prime Spark at www.primesparkwomen.com. Thank you so much to my guest, Jen Hardy. And don't forget, you can find her at Jen Hardy, JenHardy.net. JenHardy.net.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us. Spread tolerance and love. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode and would like to stay updated, you can head over to my website, primesparkwomen.com, and get my free Spark Guide, 7 questions to ignite your spark, to help you discover your own spark. See you in the next episode.